Major corporations settling lawsuits with states, making payments into the millions.
Just this week, we told you about a settlement with Equifax. The consumer reporting agency will pay out nearly $2 million after a data breach released personal information. Where does that money from cases like this go?
NBC5's Tom Garris sat down with Vermont's Attorney General to find out. He joins us now in the studio with a look at the money trail. Tom.
Well, Brian, Stephanie, if you ask the state's top prosecutor where that money from legal settlements like this go, he'll tell you that it depends. In the Equifax case, it'll go to the state and people who had their data released. The money from this example adds to the nearly $80 million that the Vermont Attorney General's office has brought in about the last year alone.
These bright red tomatoes, deep green zucchini, lettuce, and containers upon containers of nutritious food are what keep thousands of Vermonters fed, not just people who can't work or the elderly.
It's working families that are served by the food bank.
And the Vermont Food Bank is set to get a big chunk of money to keep on cooking.
An extra $100,000 is a big deal.
That $100 grand coming from Dollar General after a recent settlement that Attorney General TJ Donovan's office negotiated. Dozens of stores in Vermont got caught upping prices at registers. The company agreed to pay $1.75 million to the state. Some of that money was allocated for the food bank.
I think the Attorney General's office thought of the food bank as a way to reach so many Vermonters.
We can't identify everybody who's been ripped off, so we gave it to an organization that works to address food insecurity for that population.
Part of the AG's job is to look out for consumers and act when they've been done wrong by big companies.
And to be blunt about it, oftentimes it's more art than science.
An art to try to figure out who's been wronged and how his office can best fix it. Victims could be easier to find than in the Dollar General case. After a few hundred homes in Bennington had their drinking water contaminated with toxic chemicals, the company responsible agreed to pay millions to build new water lines.
That's it.
That's when the AG can tell exactly who's been wronged.
A great example of that is the Volkswagen settlement, where it was consumers who bought cars were easily identifiable.
The VW settlement was a big one too. The company advertised diesel cars as being environmentally cleaner than they really were.
Donovan's office also securing $6.5 million for Vermonters, getting people who bought those bogus cars an extra $1,000. But cases of this size can have even bigger impacts. The federal case against Volkswagen brought in $18.7 million to the state. Part of that will go to get a pilot program off the ground that'll hopefully keep Vermont green.
The goal of the pilot is to test electric school buses in up to 2 school districts and electric transit in at least 1 transit agency.
The state has information online about how to apply and just under $3 million to get it all done. So, by and large, most money from these settlements goes to the state's general fund. State legislators decide what to do with it from there.
I'm sure a lot of folks have opinions as to where that money should go, and I trust the legislature to make the right decision.
Well, I'd like the legislature just to be mindful of these settlements, that it is recompense for a wrong that was done to Vermonters, and to make sure that when the money is being used, it's being used with that in mind.
Now, as you can imagine, settlements like these can often extend far past the people we'll say directly impacted. Take the VW case, for example. Yes, people bought cars that were falsely advertised. However, the state's Department of Environmental Conservation is working to combat the impact that those diesel engines did to Vermont's environment and Vermonters in general. So part of that big federal settlement will also go to grow the state's e-vehicle infrastructure.
For those of us today who have electric vehicles, for those who are considering it, or who might want to in the future as more models are available, a key thing is making sure that there are charging stations at destinations, in travel corridors, in downtowns, when we might not have the opportunity to charge at home.
Now, the Volkswagen settlement clearly gained international attention, but another that could do the same, one surrounding the opioid epidemic. The AG has joined a number of other states in suing Big Pharma, companies that he says started the crisis and should pay to help in the fight against addiction. Live in the studio, Tom Garris, NBC5 News.